The light's not on.
Personnel Committee for Wednesday, January 5th, 2011. Councilmember Sine, Councilmember Saul Corretz, and we have 4 items on the agenda. Begin with number 1, please.
For item 1, the mayor has submitted a recommendation for an exemption to hire 1 deputy city engineer for the Bureau of Engineering, and I believe a representative from the Bureau of Engineering is here.
Okay. You're the representative?
Yes, good afternoon.
Where's the general manager?
Hopefully that's me also.
Okay.
I'm Gary Moore, the city engineer and general manager for the Bureau of Engineering, and here to request an exemption of 1 deputy city engineer position for the Bureau of Engineering here.
Okay, Gary, the cost, who's going to pay for all this?
It's about a $20,000 differential in pay. We've received applications from 7 city employees, and approximately 55% of the $20,000 will come from special fund, and the other will be from general fund, and we have the necessary savings to cover the cost.
Okay, so you're going to add a position, an exemption of 1 deputy city engineer. So this is a new exemption or a repeat?
It's a new exemption. The position has always existed, but we're now just asking for it to be exempt from civil service.
Okay, so you
So
had
it's
the
not-
position, it
that
was
is-
funded, you just want to take it out so you can
That is
select
correct.
someone for that particular requirement, expertise.
That is correct.
So you're not really adding, you're just exempting.
That is correct.
Okay. And the workflow, you mentioned 160 projects with capital improvements budget of $243 million.
And the
How are we on projects right now?
The Bureau of Engineering right now, we currently have 463 active projects totaling $2.7 billion right now in the Bureau of Engineering. And as you mentioned, this deputy here will be, of that is a subset of 160 projects totaling $240 million.
And the work is being done by, who's doing the work now?
We've been rotating it every 6 weeks through existing principal engineers in the Bureau of Engineering.
Okay, so this will be for city employees or for anyone to apply?
Well, we had opened it up to outside the city and in the city, and we have only received 7 applications, and they were all from within the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So the position will be filled with a city employee.
Okay, and so if they're currently in the civil service class, they'd surrender that and go to the exempt class?
That is correct.
Okay. Paul?
How did it work as a 6-week rotation? That doesn't sound very practical.
Merry-go-round.
You know, it's one of those opportunities that was more stressful on me. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it gave a lot of opportunities for the people to see what the position is like. I think it's anytime, you know, a lot of the, I think almost everybody who has applied has had a chance at the rotation. So I think it was a good opportunity for the employees and for myself. It was a good opportunity to interface with everybody on a different level than their current positions as principal engineers.
On a long-term basis, it doesn't sound like an ideal situation.
No, that's why I'm here graciously asking for this exemption here. It's time to fill the position. It's very critical with so much work going, and also you know, there's greatest time for process improvements and innovation, and to take those changes forward. I think we have the best opportunity now to fill this position. It will really help us to continue to be to optimize in these tough budget times.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty logical decision, although it's interesting that it gave you exposure to a lot of the people that you'd be looking at to hire for the full-time position.
Yes, it worked out well.
Great.
I wouldn't have preferred it, but you know, but it turned out to be I think it's been a real good experience.
Great.
One of the articles I read recently about stimulus money, that a lot of it's sitting idle. Any of that fall in line with some of the positions that this will oversee?
One of it is our bike safe grading. Grates was ARA funded, and that project's currently in construction, so they'll oversee that. Another area that we're doing is some paving project by some of our bridges, and that money is currently being spent. So we're in pretty good shape with our projects within the Bureau of Engineering.
Talking about paving bridges, there's a bridge on Van Owen near Mason. You familiar with that one?
Very familiar with that. And I just want to thank you, Councilman Zine, for coming out and talking to the employees out there while it was raining. For those who don't know, we had probably a 3-foot by 4-foot hole in the bridge actually occur. And
It was a pothole, and the pothole went down to the rebar.
that is correct.
When cars would go over, they get blowouts, and you look down there, and there's the LA River, which
Yeah.
is, it's a unique pothole,
Yes,
like 4 by 4,
yes.
big square.
And that happened a couple days before Christmas, and it was really meant a lot to the employees that you were out there in the rain with them, and so thank you. The good news is that we had just received bids on a project that's actually going to remove the entire bridge deck, the asphalt there, and widen the bridge. So sometimes you get lucky in that we had working with a mayor from Department of Transportation, we had a traffic diversion plan that had been thought out. And so we're expediting the award of the contract. We're hoping to go to the Board of Public Works either next Monday or next Wednesday to actually award the contract. So the good news is we'll start the construction. And unfortunately for the Valley residents, it does mean, as planned, that there'll be some inconvenience, and that we'll be taking a 4-lane, 2 lanes in each direction down into 1 lane while we do the construction. But after we're done, it's definitely going to be an improvement. So thank you again for your support. It meant a lot.
Well, I remember speaking to your folks out there, and they said this was planned to be widened, and they said next year. I said, well, maybe this would prompt it to go quicker, so
Yes,
it all worked out.
Yes, and that word, and I immediately, and we're expediting it. So
But
once
they were-
again,
They were looking at the workmanship, where they had the rebar, the concrete, the asphalt, and apparently it wasn't up to some standard, and I think the bridge was like 50 years old.
at
So they had
least,
some questions about
at least about 50 years old, and talking to our bridge inspectors and our structural engineers, and in my memory, we've never had such an occurrence on a bridge where we've had a pothole on a bridge. It just doesn't happen. So the good news is for the residents and everybody who uses that bridge, it's going to be completely taken off and a brand-new bridge deck put on. So we work with the Bureau of Contract Administration, who inspects all the city projects, who ensure that we'll have a quality job.
Yeah, because your folks were, there were the engineering, public works, DOT. I mean,
Yeah,
everybody-
I want to definitely acknowledge the Bureau of Street Services also,
Yeah.
who are out there moving the big K-rail around and bringing the K-rail out, and so putting the plate and making it a safe condition. It was a great team effort with the three of us. It was, and your office.
Well, we're happy that we didn't get any more than a couple flats when people went over that, but you would never imagine a pothole on a bridge when you look down there and you see rebar and then the river. So it
I agree.
could have been disastrous for someone.
I still didn't believe it. Luckily, our staff had a cell phone with a camera on it, and I said, email me a couple photos, and yes, it was right in the middle of the bridge. I mean, we've just never had that occurrence. So yeah, I didn't believe it till I saw it.
It was bizarre.
Yes.
I mean, you could actually jump through there if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
Except the rebar would catch you.
Yes.
That's all was holding up was the rebar.
Yeah.
But it was, anyway, I'm glad we got that resolved. So you want to recommend approval or have them bring the general manager back for more grilling?
No, I think I'll move approval.
Okay, thank you. You got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Happy holidays,
You
or
too.
Happy New Year, when
Happy New Year.
holidays are past. So thank you.
Yeah, wait till the budget comes in July.
Yes, we'll be there.
Okay, thank you. So we have approval on that, and number 2, please.
The Personnel Department has submitted status on the provision of services for administration of sworn workers' compensation claims by Tristar Risk Management, and I believe there's representatives here.
This reminds me of the old Texaco song, "You can trust your car to the man who wears the star, the Tristar."
Different business.
It is, it is. Okay, so I see you folks are meeting with other representatives, city entities, and it looks like things are moving along pretty well. A little bit of fraud over in the county. I think you've taken care of that matter, fraudulent activity. So why don't you bring us up to date and see what's happening with this?
I'm going to explain a little bit the difference between us and the county, and we control the vendors. Only us, city personnel, are allowed to enter the vendors into our claim system that actually issues the payments, and there's only a handful of people that can do that, which is a little different than how the county operates. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Don Alvarado, Workers' Comp Division, Personnel Department. And we also have several fraud programs in place. When we started our new managed care program, every bill that is paid, the injured worker gets what's called a explanation of benefits. If you have Blue Cross, Blue Shield, you get that after you go to the physician. Well, now, one of those goes to the injured worker. And we've gotten some calls, well, I didn't get this type of service. Well, they did, they just didn't know how to read the EO. It's called explanation of benefits, so that's a second way we're doing fraud. We also have set up that any new vendors, we're calling the injured workers, that those bills are hitting under those claims to see if they actually got the services. So that's a little different, what's different between us and the county.
Okay. Well, that system that hit the county didn't affect us directly.
No.
Okay. So what additional preventive steps is Tristar going to take to make sure that its employees are not engaged in any kind of illegal activity?
I think...
Besides tar and feather.
Yeah, and I'm Tom Veal. I'm the president of Tristar. We take this matter very seriously and have worked with the Los Angeles County. The fraud actually broke about 18 months ago, and we've been working with the Department of Insurance and about a half a dozen different law enforcement agencies for, I think the time that the arrests were actually made, I think we've been going on for 15 or 16 months. There's a variety of things that we do within our system under a special audit called a SAS 70, and what it does is basically goes through everything as to how you hire people, how you review them, how you set them up in the system, how you monitor them, supervise them throughout their careers at Tristar. Unfortunately, there are a couple of commonalities between the city and the county. Both the city and the county are not part of our SAS 70 report. And the reason for that is twofold. As Don mentioned, with the county, they control who the vendors are. With the city, they control who the vendors are. Both the city and the county enter them into the system, and they really keep control on those panels. The dramatic difference between the city and the county, when we first started working with you about 3 years ago, you guys had like dozens of people that did photocopy, dozens of people that did diagnostic testing. We got that down to a very, very small number of people. Very small number of people who do investigations. With the county program, unfortunately, they've taken the position that anyone who does business in LA County should be able to do business with the County of Los Angeles Workers' Comp program. So for instance, with investigators, we have a rotating list of 82 different investigation companies. It's very difficult to manage. It's very easy for a company to get in. The good news is the county's made some great changes. We look for them actually to move onto our computer system in the next 90 to 180 days. I think that'll be huge. They're going to come inside our SAS 70 umbrella. Again, I think that the main difference that really helps us with the city program is the vendor panels are very, very small. And so either the people at the city or the people at Tristar or both of us know who each one of the vendors are, the key vendors that are used.
Okay. So you keep it under control that way.
Yeah.
And the Lynx replacement system has been delayed. When, other than 2012, we think that's going to come online, the Lynx system? You know about that one?
Yes, it's we're still going. We're working actually with David Luther from the Personnel Department. We are working with the Information Technology Agency (ITA) to retool this project, but we've been both hit with enormous reductions in staff. It's slowed down that project significantly, and we're at the point now where we are trying to bring that to the attention of the CAO in terms of getting some additional contract support to move this project forward. The contract has been essentially drafted, but we do need additional support to finalize the contract and move forward. It's a critical project for the personnel department, the city attorney, and the city in general. and we feel we have to move forward, but we have hit some roadblocks just because of the fiscal crisis.
It was supposed to be done the fourth quarter of 2010, and now it's delayed till 2012. And
Well, I
it's
can,
gonna-
I can give you an example. ITA had assigned two of their best people to this project to manage it for us. One of those persons left for a job at DWP. The second person that they had as the project manager was assigned to the FMS continuation contract, which is a huge, like $50 million contract. So at this point, they have no staff actually to help us manage this project. And again, we're at the point now where we're starting to talk to the CAO and the CLA about how to move this project forward with what limited resources we have. I don't think we're going to, frankly, have many problems convincing people that it needs to move forward. It's just a matter of finishing it off, at least the setup part.
Well, it's going to manage the system a lot smoother, I would assume. The cases that they come in, manage the system a lot.
It'll be night and day. Currently, the link system, everything is done manually. An adjuster, for example, will do 30, 35 letters a day. It's typed on Word, and they have to type it manually.
They don't have computers to type it?
Yeah, but they have to type each letter on.
Each letter's separate.
See, with iBoss, you're going to pull up a state mandated letter. iBoss will pull all the important data into the letter. You proof it, you hit print, it's going to go to a clerical pool who's going to mail it, hook the attachments. Because sometimes we have 3, 4, 10 attachments to a particular state mandated letter. Right now, we have to type it manually, we have to go into Link, manually get the information, manually hook all the state mandated attachments, and then it finally goes out.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that makes this even more critical is as the report talks about in item 1, reducing caseloads.
Right.
The folks that handle the city program have caseloads that are about 50% higher than industry average. Our adjusters are about 210. The industry average is 125 to 150 caseloads. So
And you're at 210.
and we're at 210. So the computer system, and the good news is we were at 235. So we've made huge headway in the last 3 years, which is great. We very much appreciate that extra help. But the computer system becomes even more critical when you've got this huge extra caseload and you've got to do a lot of things manual that their counterpart in another Tristar office would have the computers all doing it for them.
Much more efficient.
Well, this is something I objected to in our whole budget process, which is we're looking at trying to implement a lot of efficiencies to save us money, yet we cut our technical budget, making it almost impossible to do it, being very penny wise and pound foolish. So I don't know how we can get the city to change its approach, because we could put a little more money into some of our technical areas and make it up in no time and on a more permanent basis.
What about the utilization review mandated by state law? And the numbers remain low in comparison to the number of open claims?
I can give a history on that. When I came to the city and Tristar were doing approximately 150 URs a month each. And the city at that particular time was paying about 20,000 bills a month each. Well, the numbers were not, that's totally skewed. In my experience, the civilian side should have been doing about 2,000 and Tristar should have been doing about 2,500 to 3,000 a month. What utilization review is, it's to protect, make sure that the injured worker is getting the appropriate treatment in a expedient manner, but isn't, going willy-nilly doing whatever they want to do. It's a cost savings measure.
Right.
Since April of 2008, we've returned close to $20 million to the general fund due to utilization review. But I still think I think Tristar's come a long way in their numbers, but I still think there is a long way to go. And entwined in this is a managed care program that the city implemented in July, and it had been in the works for 2 years. And what the managed care program is, we filed with the administrative director, the DWC, it's the entity that looks over workers' comp, a prior authorization program. And we're only the second entity to formally file in the state of California. The other one is state fund. we filed for a certain amount of treatments, the initial clinic visit, the specialty referral, 12 physical therapy, 12 occupational therapy, 12 acupunctures, MRI, 90 days of medications per formulary, and basic durable medical equipment, crutches to get out of the clinic, wristbands. Well, now the clinics, if you're in our first care panel, don't have to ask us. There is no such thing as utilization review. They automatically can dispense that instantaneously. There's no more waiting 5 days for a UR. The catch is you have to use our contracted vendor. We have a contracted radiology company that we negotiated where we're getting 25% below fee schedule, below state mandated fee schedule. On durable medical equipment, we have a contract for 25% below state fee schedule and 40% off of what's called usual and customary, because for some braces, there is no fee schedule, so it would be a usual and customary fee. We have a pharmacy benefit management program via formulary. There's one for the sworn side, one for the civilian side, and it's 2 to 3% below fee schedule, which is unheard of, and no matter if it's in formulary, it gets dispensed immediately on the first fill, so no one ever waits anymore for that. On the radiology, for an MRI, the 2 vendors we have contracted with get them in within 4 hours. On the physical therapy, the clinics send the treatment request directly to our physical medicine network, and that physical therapy appointment gets set up that day or the next day. And all physical medicine, which is physical therapy, chiropractic, acupuncturists, and occupational therapy, we're getting at 13% below state fee schedule. So initially, we were very, very, very aggressive with utilization review because it was something that when it came into the reforms in 2004 that wasn't really implemented within the city. And now we've taken it, so we've educated the city's vendors. The city has hundreds of vendors, and we spent a lot of time during the last few years educating them that the city will do UR. And it's not, you can go out and do anything you want anymore. We're going to play by the rules. But we've opened it up where on 99% of the treatment that is usually authorized, we want it to get to the injured worker immediately. Absolutely no delays. And that's gone over real well. We have gone out and spoken to departments. We've spoken to the unions, UFLAC, PPL, the other ones, EEA, and a few other ones. We actually gave a presentation along with the UR company where the applicant attorneys were there. Meristein's office, Ford's office, any applicant attorney you could think of was there. It went pretty good. It was a little attacking at first, but it went pretty good.
No, it says Tristar numbers remain low in comparison to the number of open claims. How does that rate?
UR takes work. It takes a lot of work.
Are we giving treatment and saving money at the same time, or are we neglecting something?
We're not doing utilization review.
Well, should we be?
On some items, yes, we should.
So it says no specific number of treatment requests provided for 2010. So how do we know where we are if we're not getting any numbers?
We get UR numbers per month.
Okay, but what it states in the report, the 2010 report states Tristar has sent more treatment requests to the city's UR vendor for review, but Tristar's numbers remain low in comparison to the number of open claims. No specific number of treatment requests is provided for the 2010 year. So I'm trying to figure out how we rectify that.
We're working on it. We do an audit. The city side does an audit every month.
What's the 2010 report states that Tristar has sent more treatment requests to the city's UR vendor for review, and then it says their numbers remain low in comparison to the number of open claims.
Right. Remember, they started at about 150 a month back in '08. Right now, for the first month of this report, which was January of last year, 2,088. On the civilian side, we did 1,650. We have 6,500 claims. They have about 11,500. So the numbers have improved dramatically. We would just like to see them improve some more.
So what would it take for Tristar to do that?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at
And
utilization
at
numbers.
the same time, given the proper treatment to the employee.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that, you know, as we work with 200 self-insureds throughout the country and about 175 of those in California, we look at utilization review should be as a, when you look at one account versus another, because different types of employee populations have different treatment patterns. So what we do is we look at our utilization review requests compared to the number of medical bills that are being paid. A population that's going to have high medical usage would have more utilization review, naturally because they have more requests. So when you compare the non-sworn program to the sworn program based on medical bills paid, the numbers are virtually identical. But when you compare it on open claims, there's a dramatic difference because we have a much lower number of medical bills because it's a tighter program. So, you know, again, the way the industry looks at it's a little bit different than the way that the city looks at it. If you use industry ratios, you're going to be, the programs are virtually identical. At the same time, I think when we first got involved 3 years ago, both the non-sworn and the sworn program had a real issue because everybody, not just with the city of Los Angeles, but all injured workers in California had a certain, they were used to certain treatment if they had an injury. And it was like, they were used to getting maybe 20 physical therapy visits.
Right.
Well, we all knew that that was a waste, but until we got the new laws in 2004, we really couldn't do much about it. So part of it was to educate the workforce to do that and make sure. The other thing that I think we have to look at is if we deny something for utilization review in the workers' comp program, that doesn't mean that the city won't end up paying for it. One of the things that we need to look out at is, I think you use Blue Cross for your medical plan. We need to figure out how much of the UR requests that we deny is Blue Cross ultimately certifying and paying for, because then we're really losing money on it because you're paying for that utilization review service and the denial, which can be sometimes very expensive, yet you end up paying for the services. Same pair of pants, different pockets.
Yeah.
So more study needs to be done, but I think that the programs are comparable when you look at medical services rather than open claims.
And
Okay.
Mr. Zine, I would just add, we've had some discussions with Tristar after the release of this report, and I think we've committed to work together to really isolate the metrics that we're going to use to measure
Okay.
performance, and we'll be reporting back on a quarterly basis, I believe, on UR review, and we should have more information in the next report.
So we're making progress,
I think we're going to get there.
building
Definitely.
that bridge without a pothole.
How hard is it to identify what the best practices are in this arena? Because it sounds like it's kind of edgy.
I think we have the best practice in the industry.
Well, naturally, you'd think that.
And I think
But
the
Grace
thing-
would say.
But if, as you say, some utilization review winds up then costing you money, are we at the point where we've identified that and we actually have a plan to handle it in the best practice way?
I think with the prior authorization program, the triggers, and the managed care program, our UR numbers are going to drop we're probably only 20% implemented into the managed care program. I mean, it's a mass undertaking to educate. We have 16,000 open claims between the both of us, and we're educating the medical community, the injured workers. But as we get implemented into this program and we expand the program right now is people that are within the program is the city's first care panel, Southern California Orthopedic Institute, and Kurlam and Jobe.
Yep.
We're going to be bringing Kaiser into it because about 60% of the city employees belong to Kaiser. But staffing is a big issue for our division. I mean, we have 23 vacancies, and so we're just trying the best we can. So as it's implemented more, UR numbers will go down. But, you know, stuff like $1,200 Caspin cream lotion, it's Cajun peppers mixed with some lotion, $1,200. That needs to go to UR. It's those kind of things.
Tom agrees with that.
Oh, yeah.
Will it grow hair? Will it grow hair or something?
And so, I mean,
Start a new business.
we're going in the right direction, but the division has high standards,
Yeah.
and we would like Tristar to reach them. We have very high standards of the benefits.
But you've got a bridge of working in cooperative effort.
Correct.
That's what's important.
Yes.
'Cause
Right.
obviously, an injured worker needs to have the care, the treatment, want to get them back to work, want to obviously reduce the cost, the liability. So, I mean, that's the focus. When they get injured, we have an obligation, responsibility, and then obviously to get them back to work as quickly as possible. What about the, it's something positive, managed care program? The programs have resulted in injured workers receiving treatment more quickly and having increased savings, which is a positive.
It's not only saving us money in medical dollars, it's saving us in IOD, because they're not sitting around waiting 5 days for the MRI or 5 days for the physical therapy referral. And it's also resulted in a substantial workload reduction for Tristar and the city, because we no longer have to call the clinic, call the PT facility and authorize it. We no longer have to call and set up the MRI. The vendor does everything. The authorization's inputted into our UR vendor's computer system, and that is faxed directly, instantly to the vendor. So a lot of it, we've reduced workload for both us and Tristar, which hopefully will result in better customer service to the injured workers. Also, all of our contracted managed care vendors, these bills no longer go to the adjuster, and that's about 35% of the bill load that they were receiving. They go directly to the bill review company because they're hard-coded against the computer, the bill review system via IRS numbers to automatically pay per the contracted rate. The adjusters no longer have to take the paper, review it, stamp it, initial it, send it on its way. It's automatic, and we're seeing it's about 35% of the bills that come in. So the managed care has tentacles.
Good.
Which has released, so I'm hoping to see better customer service with taking all this paperwork and little stuff that you have to do as an adjuster.
And that shows the city attorney's office and Tristar meeting to resolve litigation claims. Because I remember sometimes people would say, I gotta file a claim, I gotta file a lawsuit in order to get treatment. Or they just wanna get treatment, they don't wanna file a lawsuit. Have we ever resolved that issue? Where they get hurt and they don't wanna file a legal, they just wanna get the treatment, get back to work. They don't care about some kind of a claim, a legal claim for.
Litigation numbers are going down, but it's mentality.
Well,
James.
the old practice was you had to file a lawsuit. And then hopefully we can get away from that and just get them back to work in a.
Oh, yeah, this is James Soto from Tristar, Vice President, Regional Manager. We've worked very hard to reduce litigation, as Don has pointed out, and we've also tried to make the litigation easier when there is litigation, and we've done that by instituting a number of settlement conferences. But I believe the unions feel comfortable in giving Tristar a call if one of their members has an issue, and they don't hesitate. They usually communicate via email, and we get back to them, if not the same day, within 24 hours. And our goal is to eliminate a lot of these things. And I think the key thing for us, and what I've learned in working on this program for the past 3 years, is that there is a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of urban legends about things like utilization review and medical treatment and what the city's trying to do with utilization review. And I know that the meeting that Don spoke at, that we had at Tristar a few months ago with the applicants bar and a lot of the unions and the stakeholders generally, we were able to explain, or Don was able to explain, just what UR is all about. And I don't hesitate, for example, if I see an article about some important thing that UR has helped discover or save somebody's life, that I don't hesitate in passing that on to the union. A recent example is that there was an article that came out that showed that spinal fusions, of which unfortunately we have a number of people, both sworn and non-sworn, that have had them, have a very low rate of success. And yet that's a very common type of treatment that's recommended. And it's something that utilization review questions quite a bit. And so the more we can educate our stakeholders, and that's one of our goals for 2011, is to continue with the process that we've started with Don and personnel to increase the amount of communication that we have with the stakeholders, because I've discovered that basically they just They just want to understand the process, and this is a very difficult and complicated process to understand.
And then the other issue came to my attention, out-of-state employees, and one was referred recently, I think you guys jumped right on it, lives in Florida, retired on a pension, disability, lives in Florida, having an issue with medical care. Do we have that problem around the country? Because
Yes.
people retire and,
And-
how do we resolve that? They go all over the country when they retire.
I think what we're gonna do, and, because I was on the phone for quite a long time with him today, is anytime we have an out-of-state, injured worker, we're gonna send an introductory letter with the proper billing codes. Because what I'm gonna do to fix this latest problem is I'm gonna send, it's on acupuncture treatment. I'm gonna go ahead and authorize the 24 visits, but I'm gonna send the physician the billing codes because they don't know how to bill.
Okay.
The original problem that prompted his call to you is this individual has some injections with anesthesia in the injections, and that's a pharmaceutical. And every pharmaceutical in the United States has what's called the NDC code, National Dispensary Code. But his physician didn't know anything about the NDC code. So what I'm going to do is go to our bill review company, tell them to get me the codes. I'm going to call the physician, kind of educate him a little. And, we have short staff, Tristars, with the 10% reductions doing their best. I think we're going to try to make this a policy that when we get an out-of-state person, we're going to try to educate the physicians because we can rely on our bill review company to give us the billing codes.
Okay, because he informed me that he had to move out of state because he couldn't afford the cost of living in California anymore. So that's why he moved to the other state.
A lot of them are out of state.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a conflict between the California Labor Code and the rules of other states regarding medical treatment. And that's where we have to deal with that.
Yeah, I
The other
thought about that,
states,
yeah.
they look at us like, we don't care what your labor code
Yeah,
says.
that's true. With a lot of right-to-work states, they don't have anything.
That's right, yeah.
Happy to have a job and that's it, without any kind of benefit. So anyway, we could look into that. But, one idea, I know you folks meet with the unions and things, maybe if you prepared an article for the Blue Line or the Fire Department publication, because they're always looking for information to disseminate, and maybe, some folks will read it, and then there's all the meetings that they have, the delegates meetings, to disseminate, to clear up some of the confusion. And the retired folks have newsletters, the active folks have newspapers, newsletters. Maybe some proactive information on that would help.
Yeah, I think James wrote
Yeah,
a
excellent idea,
great
yeah.
article for.
I have a
that's-
draft.
Okay,
already
that's,
sent.
and they're always looking to fill space, so it's something worthwhile.
Right.
We're also going to me and James are working on becoming active at I can't remember if they're monthly or quarterly retiree
Yeah,
meetings.
quarterly, yeah.
The one up in Legion Park?
Correct. And we're going to start attending that and actually speaking at it.
Good idea.
And we have it's fast, if there was 5 of us, we could maybe get it all done, but we're going to start mass educational programs with the departments and our medical providers. Our next one, which is going to be in February, we're going to invite all 254 of our first care clinics in 4 sessions, because we don't have any place to put them at once, and go over the prior authorization program, because even though we've done outreach, I've gone there, we've gone there, I've been to Curlin Joe, SCO, we met, they still have questions. And so we're gonna start with that, and then we're gonna do a road show, and anyone that'll listen to us, we're gonna try to educate them. And the personnel department, we've been asked to speak at national conventions in workers' comp this year about the program.
Good.
So, and we have 4 invitations so far. So that's gonna be good, good PR for the city, good PR for us, because it's specifically on the program that we've developed, so.
And what about the RFP?
The RFP for the 1,000 claims has been sent to the city attorney, and the RFP that you requested to go out on the rest of the book of business is almost in its final stages. We're still working on it due to, again, staffing shortages. We're concentrating on the 1,000 claims.
Okay. Let's see, so we got this. For future reports, can the personnel department provide number of treatment requests sent for UR for the review, and the amount of money saved through managed care and pre-authorization programs? Because as we go into this new budget July 1st, it's going to be very, very stressful as far as maintaining services and keeping people.
I can give you an idea. From July until October 31st, we saved $2.2 million on pharmaceuticals. In that same period, $880,000 on durable medical equipment. I don't have figures on the rest due to a lack of time to get them to you. So it's working. The IOD hours are down.
Good.
We preliminary looking at that because there is no weight factor. Another initiative that we have planned maybe to roll out in May is have a dedicated return to work person within the division, depending on if we get staffing. On the civilian side, it'll be a pilot, just like we actually started piloting the managed care program back last October. So everything we do is like a pilot. Someone who will work directly with the departments, because some of the times the departments are so overwhelmed or they don't know how they could modify the individual's job, they can't bring him back to work.
Yep.
So we want to do a pilot where we have one specific person that goes out to the departments, works with them face to face, instead of an overworked adjuster on the phone.
Good idea.
And we would also be working with police and fire on that too. And I'm sure Tristar would follow us on that, but that's our next initiative that we're going to be working on.
Okay.
And in February, our dental network will be final. We're also going to have a dental network that will is being filed with the administrative director for approval right now, which will prevent us from paying $80,000 dental bills with the Beverly Hills dentist from now on. So we will have that too.
Gee. When you start looking at it dollar by dollar, it mounts up.
Yes, you just look at everything.
Okay, so can we instruct the personnel department to report in 6 months on the status of the Tristar contract to include?
Got a couple of questions still.
Okay, well, before that, I'll read this, then we can do that.
Okay.
Any additional safeguards and oversight mechanisms implemented by Tristar to ensure that its employees, well, we already took care of that, they're not engaged in fraud. And then what I want to do is note and file the personnel department report from November 17th. And to close,
A couple other quick questions. You mentioned you had a 23-person staff shortage,
personnel department, medical section.
obviously because of our financial shortfall. Are we actually saving money by not having those 23 people, or is it costing us money? And if so, should we be trying to reinstate those positions?
We probably won't make budget this year because of the shorting staffages.
We're projecting a shortfall on our workers' comp program by $3 million because of the staffing shortage. We have gotten recent approvals from Managed Hiring Committee to fill 9 positions. It took many, many months to get that approval. I think our concern is that we're still going to have attrition. And we, to be very frank, we can't afford to wait months every time we have to fill a position. We cannot implement the programs that achieve these savings and these efficiencies with basically a hard hiring freeze in our division with no ability to backfill any staff, as well as absorbing our furloughs.
We have 23 vacancies, and we just got notice today another analyst is leaving us, so that gives us 24 vacancies.
Yeah, that's my concern, as I expressed earlier. Is there any way we can assist you in trying to get the staffing that you need? Because from my standpoint, wherever we cut and it winds up being a net loss to us, it's not necessarily a good thing in our
Well, they got
budgetary
managed hi-
difficulties.
The problem is they got managed hiring. It goes through review before it comes to us, and there's a lengthy process, and they nickel and dime everything just because of the lack of funding. So it's not that
Right,
they
but if the
want-
lack of funding digs us in a deeper hole, I mean, there are places scattered all throughout the state budget where the state has made cuts and then lost more money. And so it's part of why we're $25 billion plus short statewide is we've cut a lot of things that are inefficient to cut and dig ourselves in a deeper hole.
You
So,
close DMV on Fridays when DMV collects money. DMV's furloughed on Friday and they collect money. It makes no
right, so,
sense.
I mean, I've given up on the state and I'm not there, so there's not much I can do. I'm hoping Jerry Brown and others get it to straighten up. But at the same time, some of the cuts we make, we provide less service and we save some money. Some of the cuts, we provide less service to ourselves and we actually cost ourselves money. And hopefully, there's some way to identify those and turn them around. And I'm wondering if you can see some way in which we can assist you in that regard.
I would I would just say thank you very much, and we certainly appreciate your interest in that issue. I think to be fair, I'd like the opportunity to go back to Managed Hiring Committee with a blanket unfreeze for this program as far as the staffing goes. And, depending on how that's received by Managed Hiring Committee, we'll have to see if we might need additional assistance. On the furloughs, it's a tough issue. I mean, it's one of those things where I would love to have the entire division exempted from furloughs, but again, we're in a fiscal crisis. There are many city employees on furloughs, and to some extent, it's probably fair that they're on furloughs, and I probably don't want to push that issue. But.
And I think if I can just throw something in from the private sector, because we, in many ways, we do the same type of work, but there's a couple of things that when the city in-house program goes out and competes for examiners, and the pool of examiners in the state is getting smaller and smaller, so the city's having to compete with private industry on this. And the caseloads, most examiners, they actually do ask that question, what kind of a caseload? And when they're looking at 200 plus in the city program versus maybe 135 in a typical program, if they're looking at a computer system that's maybe 20 years old versus a state-of-the-art system. And then also I think the RFP process itself with, knowing that there's part of this is going to be outsourced or may be outsourced in the near future, a prospective employee looks at those three things and it does make it very difficult. So I think to have the ability, for the city to have the ability to have blanket hiring of positions, I think would really help. That's my 2 cents from the private sector.
Yeah,
You're right, it would definitely help. The problem is in coming on the budget committee where I served a period of time, you got how we're gonna pay for it. And that's, as we go deeper and deeper in deficit,
Yeah.
we're cutting back on the fire service. There's no more cash overtime for law enforcement. They're being forced to take off, which reduces the field force. I mean, it's across the board from public safety to the human services aspect. And it's just a matter of, if we could give them the blanket authority, we'd like to give them the blanket authority, but then it comes up, you're already a deficit, you get a deeper deficit.
Well,
where's it gonna come
but
from?
if it's
Mr.
the
Snyder,
net savings,
the
then
problem-
it would come from the net savings.
So the problem we have, the reason we have the deficit is because we don't have the staff to implement the programs.
So would the additional staff balance out with the cost of the savings?
We're only 20% implemented on the managed care, and that's 2.2 million just in the pharmaceuticals.
Take it to managed hiring and see if they accept it. If they accept it, we're not opposed to doing it, but I know at the end of the year, they say, you're so far down, how are we gonna make this up? And then we go and carry that debt, and then we start out, because there's supposed to be $53 million coming in from selling parking lots. They haven't sold any parking lots. So as we finish up this fiscal year, going into July, where's this $53 million, which is included in the budget? It's not there, because it was, hopefully be sold. Like when you turn 16, you get your brand new red Corvette. It's a little toy you get, not the real thing.
And I have, my second question is something you already touched on, which is the caseloads. How do we reduce the caseloads, and are we at the high caseloads because of our finances? And if we reduced our caseloads, wouldn't that again be a net savings?
We've gone through this route with several clients over the last 25 years, and virtually every time what happens is that because the examiners have more time to work on each file, the files close a lot faster. If you look at a California workers' comp file and look at it, say it's like we're going to spend about $1,000 a month between TD and medical, and that's just a state average. If that file's open 28 months, you got $28,000. If it's open 40 months, you got $40,000 of cost in that file. So normally for every dollar you spend on administration to a point, you're going to get $5 savings on your expenses. If you look at your overall expenses, the workers' comp program, less than 10% is administrative. 90% of your costs are indemnity benefits, the IOD, the TD, 40-50 time, and then the medical costs. That's where let's work on those big dollars.
So we know we'd save money by having a lower caseload.
Right.
How do we get to that point? And
If I can give you an example, in the civilian side, we have a pilot going on where we have a team that takes in all the new files that are filed on the civilian side, and their caseloads are 80. But the reason they're 80 is these are the brand new active cases that are going boom, 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 boom. But what we're finding out through this pilot is the majority are closing in 90 days. The average cost per claim is down by $2,200. But that's because their caseloads are so low and manageable, even though they have all the new cases that are able to give them personal service. They BS on the phone together with the injured worker. It's neat to be on that side of
Build a
we have them on the other side because they're having good relationships with
Get
these
it
injured
done.
workers. But we
Yeah.
do have that pilot going on. And we put it in place because of the managed care program, because that's where we started. And it is showing the cases are closing faster and at less cost, and very little litigation.
I mean, it's one of the most intuitive things, and it's slightly more intuitive to me because I was a workers' comp claims adjuster for a little while at State Fund, and it's one of the few things I learned clearly. The more time you have on your cases, the quicker you can handle them, more appropriately you can handle them, and the quicker you can close them, and the better service you provide the injured worker. So it's a win-win for everybody. So how do we get there?
We would need more money in our contractual services budget.
And then at the end of the day, do your savings offset? And would they not offset even in the same fiscal year so that,
But everything we save, we return to the general fund. We return, we already returned, we actually returned money mid-year, unfortunately.
Yeah,
We're gonna be deficit.
the IVOS replacement project is being funded from savings from last year, so we paid our own way on that as well.
so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it seems up to a point, the more money we put into this, the more money we save.
Correct.
And I think we should be looking for these kinds of opportunities and fully funding them. I mean,
We'll see what happens when you go to managed hiring, and when we come to the new fiscal year.
I'm concerned that we have these scattered throughout our budget. I know that we still have a shortage of 70 ticket writers, and they bring in multiple times their salary, yet we're not hiring because of managed hiring. So I don't think the council set up this kind of managed hiring program to cost the city money, and I don't think we're looking at it with a broad enough perspective.
Yeah, and, on Tristar's side, the caseloads are way out of industry standards, but that's what the city contract is for, 175 active indemnity claims, but the industry average is 125 right now because of all the new reforms, utilization review, return to work, managed care, and that is the industry norm.
Well, my colleague makes a good point, and I think as we go into the continuation of 2011, we find out where the deficit is and how we're going to have to make adjustments and balances. Public safety, taking care of your employees, services in the community, and every time we cut a service, we're not cutting taxes. And there's the voters, the people paying taxes are still paying taxes. They're not getting the cut in the dollars. And if you hear what the state's talking about with the CRA funding, and talking about throwing things back on the city and the county and let them pay for it without subsidies to pay, it's not going to be a pretty budget year. But I can understand why we have managed hiring, and how you have to plead the case and wait in line, because believe me, the police department, the fire department, everybody's in the same line.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're picking on the personnel department. Anything else before we
No, I'm good.
receive and file, note and file? Note and file.
Move.
Thank you all very much. Good seeing you all. Thank you. Next. Number 3, please.
Personnel Department has submitted reports relative to employee development and training programs offered to city employees during fiscal year 2008-09 and status of department's compliance with state and federal mandated training.
Raylan Knapper, Personnel Department. This is a follow-up to fiscal year 08-09 and of our annual training survey and report. And this is just reporting back on the training that's mandated by state and federal laws of departments, which you asked us to do.
Yep.
And digging a little deeper, putting a little more pressure on departments, we saw a significant increase in compliance. We had originally reported about 30% of non-compliance, which was 64 courses of 214 mandated courses. And as it stands now, the 3 departments where we weren't sure or that they weren't in compliance were Animal Services, Public Works, Sanitation, and Disability. Sanitation has a huge number of courses. They're the bulk of the mandated. They have 76. And what we found out, it was a little hard to pin them down, but what we found out was they were reporting on their standards, which are actually higher than what's set by OSHA and the other agencies. So it was a little hard for them to separate those out. They have an entire training section dedicated to monitoring this and following up with employees. So we felt confident once we dug a little deeper and talked to them that they're pretty close to completely compliant. Backing up a moment, another thing we looked at and sort of took out of the equation, departments were very literal in their response, and they often counted employees who were on leave as making them not compliant. We consider that compliant. Everybody in the workplace that needs to be trained, that's working, is trained. When they come back, they follow up with them. So that took care of a lot of the non-compliance. Animal Services had 6 FEMA courses, and the personnel director for Animal Services fell ill today, but he provided me his follow-up info. All 3 departments were invited to be here today, if you have questions. So Animal Services, they lost their training coordinator a couple years ago. That was one problem. Then they designated a senior animal control officer to become their training officer. That person looked at the law, said everybody needs to be trained on all these things, and that's what they reported. When told they had to appear here, the personnel director did a little more research and found out that that's really not the case, kind of like sanitation and OSHA. For them, those laws are for people who have a direct role in emergency response and preparedness, and those are their primary duties. So that's very few of their people. And they're in the process still of identifying exactly who those are, but given that they started training over broadly and almost everyone, they feel they're pretty close to compliance there. So, but they're still sorting that out.
And BOS?
BOS?
Bureau of Sanitation?
Bureau of Sanitation is right here.
So Animal Services, you think are being compliant now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sanitation?
Good afternoon. Chuck Terhalo from the Bureau of Sanitation.
Well, Chuck, looks like you're in compliance with OSHA requirements, however, non-compliant with a small number of other mandated courses. What are you doing about those?
Basically, we have a training information management system software package where we track all the employees, and then we look at scheduling them through our training classes as they come in. The 08-09 fiscal year became an issue for scheduling of classes with our outside vendors for training like first aid CPR, because letters of agreement were introduced with all of our vendors. And it took the attorneys on both sides, theirs and ours, about 4.5 months to sort through it. So we lost about a third of the year for training, which is why 08-09 fiscal year was so low on compliance. Now, on the actual CalOSHA standards, they prefer like 1 person trained per crew. Our standard is we want to train all of the crew. So if the 1 person's not the key person there, the crew doesn't do any work. It also allows us for our facilities that operate 24/7, we can move personnel between the sections and the nights and the shifts without needing to look at if they're all trained at that high standard on that. So since we got the letters of agreement in 08-09 settled by the attorneys last fiscal year and this fiscal year, we've had no problems maintaining about 90-95% compliance with our internal standards, which are well above the CalOSHA required standards.
Okay, because there is a lot of heavy equipment they're dealing with. A lot of caution has to be exercised.
That's correct, and training of like our electricians on high voltage and things like that.
And then the failed department, they totally out of compliance.
Department on Disability?
Yes.
And I believe a representative from that department is here as well. And they did not respond to the survey at that time or our follow-ups, but we have since gotten in touch.
Tony Abraham with the Department on Disability. We've had something of a rotation in 2007, 2008. I am now the personnel director. I was on the list as a training coordinator without acquiring the entire file. And with the disruption we had last year of the department possibly being eliminated, most likely I had overlooked many of those messages. So we're back on track now. I think we responded to the 0910. It's a matter of backtracking for the 0809 and probably going through the checklist again to ensure what are all the training requirements.
How many folks do you have in the department?
We went from 18 down to 15 now.
Okay,
3 had gone on EREP.
so you're at 15 employees. Okay, so why don't we have you come back in about 3 months
Okay.
with an update, and then we can bring this up to standard. All the other departments comply?
Yes.
Okay, so let's give you 3 months, Tony, with only 15 folks.
Right.
Should be able to give sufficient time to bring everybody up to standard, and then we'll be in compliance on that.
Okay.
Nothing else.
So that'll be the direction, receive and file, except for Department of Disability, 3 months back for the updates. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And Lee, and number 4, please. Raylan, you're still here?
Still here, Raylan Knapper, Personnel Department.
For item 4, the Personnel Department has submitted a report relative to consolidated reasonable accommodations for employees with temporary and permanent work restrictions. This is as a result of industrial or non-industrial injuries or illnesses for the first quarter of fiscal year 2010-11.
This is a test, testing the system.
This is the Office of Public Safety. We are in the DA system. This is only the test. This is only the test.
It's appropriate, they always do it during meetings. All right.
Okay, so this is our standard quarterly report. It combines information from our workers' comp division as well as city departments regarding reasonable accommodation and citywide placement. This covers the first quarter of the current fiscal year, 2010-11. And the workers' comp information tracks light duty, which is hours worked, IOD saved, which is light duty hours times the employee's salary, and IOD spent, which is the money when an employee can't come back in any capacity. And attachment 1 are the city totals for this fiscal year, and in comparison to this quarter, the prior fiscal year, light duty hours are down just slightly over 1%. That's a good trend. We'd like to see that down more. That should be trending up, would be positive. And so this is just slightly under under being the same. IOD saved is up 4.8% nonetheless. And IOD spent increased by about 21%, a little over 21%. And that number's trending the opposite way we'd like to see. We want to see that overall going down. And the workers' comp division is looking into all the reasons why there's been a slight rise in claims, as well as in cost per claim for a couple of departments. And then they're also looking further into seeing what else may be attributable to that. Then on attachment 2, which is your third page attached, is the departmental summary of reasonable accommodation requests. This tracks the number of requests received by departments, requests for reasonable accommodation by disabled employees. And the total there for the quarter was 62. They granted 45, 10 were denied, and 106 remain pending. And you can see we're kind of have a working definition down here below of denied. In the last meeting, I think Councilmember Parks asked us to maybe change the label or refine the label, but basically, for the most part, employees either, if they're in public works, they get forwarded to OMIS to look throughout all the bureaus. Otherwise, they get forwarded to citywide placement. Which brings us to the final attachment 3, and that's the summary of citywide placement efforts. So once an employee can't be accommodated in their department, the personnel department looks citywide to find them a place. And we received 5 new searches in this quarter, resolved 3, and 25 remain pending.
So those 25 are just sitting around waiting for something?
Correct.
And how long do they normally sit around and wait before we give them something?
Well, it definitely depends, case by case, what classifications they qualify for, determines how many options there are. Also, the city's hiring, how many vacancies and positions are available determines that. And as you can imagine, there aren't a large number of opportunities right now. So some people can sit as long as, a couple years sometimes.
Are they collecting salary?
No.
These are
At this
paid.
point, they've usually exhausted all compensated
So
time.
all benefits are gone?
Right.
Okay.
The intern on duty increase, is that unusual to have that kind of a jump in a relatively short period of time?
Over the couple years that I've been reporting this seems like the largest jump I can recall. So yes, and that's why I think the workers' comp division is digging a little deeper to see what all the factors that went into that increase.
Do we know if there were a unique number of injuries?
I don't believe that's the case. Just a slight increase, but the cost per claim in the police department in the airports jumped significantly, like a couple thousand, $2,000 or $3,000 a claim. It rose on average. So I think they're going to dig a little deeper and figure out what's behind those numbers. If something.
Okay, so we don't know yet if there's some kind of practice that is causing more serious injuries or what the factors might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we will notify all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that'll conclude our meeting.